Hi everyone, my name is Don. I'm a general surgery resident, and today we're going to talk about how much money are resident doctors making in Canada. Is it true that resident doctors are making less than minimum wage per hour when you break it down? Let's have a look. Now, I totally understand that talking about money or salary is always a sensitive topic, but I did want to be transparent, and that's because that's something that I would have wanted to know a bit more in depth in medical school and even before that, just knowing how much exactly doctors make, just to know what I'm getting into. So for whatever reason you clicked on this video, I want to present this in the most unbiased ways possible. I'm not complaining, and I'm certainly not bragging about the amount of money I'm making. So take it as you wish, but I'm gonna dive into a bit of detail and break down the salary. So the short answer to the title of this video is that resident doctors, for the most part, are going to make anywhere from $55,000 to $100,000 Canadian a year. And that's going to be based on the level of training they are at. The higher you progress, the more you get paid. And this is actually not a secret. You can actually look that up right now and see what doctors make, and it does vary by province because the contracts negotiated with each provincial government is a little bit different, but that ballpark remains valid. So I'll show you where to find gross annual salaries and resident contracts for the most part in Canada. So if you just go on the internet and type CARMS and salary, you're gonna find this nice table and information about all the salaries and benefits of postgraduate training of doctors by province. And CARMS is basically a company that dedicates itself to matching residents and putting residents into postgraduate positions, and they have this to help you kind of see what the benefits are compared to when you compare each province. So in my case, I would go to Ontario, and as you can see here, you have just a nice table that shows you the salaries for first year of postgraduate studies, which I am right now. And you can see that every year there's a certain little increase. They renegotiate things, and also for inflation. So right now we're in this column here, which is a gross annual salary before tax, $59,000, even to the cent there. And you see every year there is a significant jump, and you can consider that actually next year would be right here. Every year you can see it goes up by $5,000 or $6,000 a year, which is significant, especially when you get to the postgraduate year 5, when you're ending your training, or if you're doing a fellowship, things get obviously quite interesting for someone who's still a trainee. And if you scroll down here, you can see all the benefits that residents have. So we do get life insurance and parental leave and pregnancy leave, and there's also vacation here of 4 weeks and a professional leave 7 working days a year. One thing I want to bring attention to is that there is a call stipend. So it's now a bit more increased, but you see here that every time you're on call in the hospital, you do get an extra $116, which is paid out every few months. So you gotta add to this gross salary this here. And so this call stipend might not look like a lot per call, but because we do so much call, it does become a significant increase in our salary. That's also to take into account when we're going to make the calculation with the number of hours of how many dollars per hour do residents make. And so the only real thing that is going to change your gross annual salary is going to be the province where you are situated. And in the same province, in the same postgraduate year of training, all residents are going to be making the same amount of money. And so that's regardless of the specialty they're in, the amount of hours they work in a day because of the specialty they are in, the rotation they're at. And so that's generally going to be the same amount across the board. So now that you understand that we're paid on a yearly salary with a little bonus every time we are on call, let's see the number of hours we work in general to see how much it would equate in a hourly wage. So what I've basically tried to make here is a estimation of the past 2 weeks in internal medicine and how much I worked. And so this is just 2 weeks, and the C's are for calls, and the X's are for post-call days. So basically I work 24 hours into the next day, and then in the morning you get to go home, and so I'm not going to count that. And so this is pretty typical. Some weeks are going to be heavier than others. As you can see here, I have one call and then the weekend off, and other times you're going to have basically the whole weekend busy there with a Friday call and the Sunday. To estimate that, I know that this is going to vary a lot by specialty, and surgery is always going to tell you that they work very hard even if when they're not on call. But what I found kind of as a ballpark, and just to also estimate the higher side, because we are trying to see, is this in fact minimum wage? And so I'm gonna not exaggerate, but more show the higher side of how many hours residents work. So I estimated at around 12 hours each day and 25 hours for calls, because it roughly becomes, it's 24, but ends up being a bit more than that. And some people will tell you it's even around 30 hours when they're on call, but we're gonna be conservative and within guidelines. So here's the calculation I have for you. Basically, as you can see here in the 2-week span, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days that are regular. So I did 12 hours just to estimate again, times 5, which is 60, and 24 hours. I have 4 of those. And also it just makes the calculations easy, makes 100, adding them to is 160 in 2 weeks, which equals to about 80 hours a week. Again, this will vary highly depending on the rotation, and sometimes weeks are going to be even more rough where you can have 4 calls in a week, but those are pretty rare and don't continue for an entire month, for example. So 80 hours a week is basically where I would estimate how much I worked in the past 2 weeks. And so to calculate the hourly wage, you're going to take the gross salary and try to divide it into the number of hours I work on average. So that 80 hour a week, if that goes on for the entire year, what is that going to be like? So the gross salary for first year is going to be $65,000. Again, this is just a big ballpark number because this is the base salary that I showed you earlier, as well as the call stipend, which varies again depending on how much people work, but generally $65,000 gross before income tax is going to be the number that we're going to use for now. I'm putting in 48 weeks because in our contract we do have 4 weeks of vacation. There's also other days. Without getting into too much detail, I would estimate it to 48 weeks of work officially in 1 year. And so just again, if you calculate with a calculator, you're going to see that it comes a little under $1,400, but because this is a conservative number, I would estimate it at $1,400 per week. And again, before any outrage or complaints, this is before income tax. And so dividing, finally the big calculation here, dividing the 1,400 by the 80 hours a week equals to a grand total of $17.5 an hour for work. And so, of course, this is a rough measurement. A lot of people are going to say they work a lot more than that. And as you progress in your postgraduate years, you are going to make a significant amount more than the $65,000 a year here. So this number, I think, is a good estimate. However, just a disclaimer that I do not agree with counting wages in an hourly rate. I know that's how generally people are paid, but that's not how we're paid or how the framework of our salary works. So I'm doing this just as a pure calculation for those who are curious what it ends up being like. So if you're thinking of minimum wage as being $15 an hour and that this is comparable, I would disagree with that, just because in the grand scheme, and when we're working the entire year, we are making above the median, above the average salary of Canadians. And so the amount of work we would do compensates for that, but we're also not paid by the hour. We don't have an incentive to work more hours. It's really just that patient care demands that we work all these hours, and the fact that we have to do call makes us work a lot, but this is just a calculation based on numbers. But I do not think, or I do not consider myself, or I tell people that I make a little above minimum wage, because that's just not reflective of the truth. And so obviously all of these numbers are going to be before income tax, and how much income tax, yeah, it does vary on how much money you're making, what your status is, what your tax returns are going to be, and who you have to take care of. So obviously that's a very complicated thing to kind of try to estimate. And so with all of that being said, considering the amount of hours we work, the amount of money we get paid, the amount of call we do, is it all worth it? And that's so easy for me to answer. That's a definite yes, it is worth it. At this time anyway, I have really no complaints, and I can only be grateful for the position I have right now as a resident physician at 22 years old, making a decent living and learning so much. I think one of the aspects that makes it so worth it is that I'm basically being paid to work, but also a part of it, half of it is learning and becoming a physician and learning things more in depth that I've learned in medical school, fine-tuning diagnostic skills and procedural and technical abilities. And it's crazy to think that within 5 years, I'm gonna have a new set of skills basically that I don't have really right now. The other example I use sometimes to let people know that it is worth it is that, for example, say you start in a business as an intern and you later find a job kind of at the lowest level of the corporate ladder, if you will, any kind of business or engineering where you're in a big company with opportunities to get promoted. So people are going to work really, really hard to get promotions. They're going to work extra hours, weekends, and try to make connections to build a reputation, always get promoted. And that's an uncertainty. Imagine you could enter a business where every year you're going to be promoted. Certainly, if you do just your job requirements and not necessarily anything extra, you're gonna get a promotion every year with a pretty significant raise every year. And at the end of 5 to 7 years of doing that every year, you're gonna have the salary and the responsibilities of an executive, of someone who's high up and in charge of a lot of people. And to me, that's basically what residency and medicine is, the way it's structured, is that we work as residents really hard. Things get a little easier as you're progressing through because there's going to be people working under you, you're getting better paid, and at the end of the road, there's going to be basically in Canada, it's a really, really interesting salary that awaits at the end for staff physicians. But it puts it into perspective, I think, when you consider it that way, and that I really don't have a reason to complain right now for my position in life. And so honestly, yes, this whole video is about money and how much money doctors make, but I really don't want people to think that this is the only reason I'm in this for. I just understand that job security and salary is something that helps medicine be appealing and helps keep people inside medicine as well. I also encourage you to watch some of my other videos to show you that I really, really do love what I do, and I try to share that passion as much as possible. Check out my channel and my other videos, and if you like, subscribe, leave a comment, and otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video.